Welcome, everyone, to episode 7 of the StarCraft 2 Weekly Whine Live. I'm your host, Ace, and I'm joined by my good friend Miro, and today's guest is Chadderzo. Say hello to everybody.
G'day,
How you
guys.
nerds? How you doing?
All right. So I set this up just because I always enjoyed like open and honest conversations about balance and the game and design and things like that. But I just find it hard to find in the community. You know, people tend to argue. So I just hope to do my small part in changing that with this show. If people enjoy, please consider giving a like or subscribe. And today we are going to be focusing on the economy. And I'm not talking about the Strait of Hormuz, I'm talking about the Kaprulu sector. There's been a lot of talk recently about the mineral counts and the worker counts and all that fun stuff. I think there's a lot to get into. Before we dive into that, though, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Chatters, and your StarCraft journey?
Oh, I mean, I'm probably not as interesting as most of your guests. I'm not a grandmaster. Let's make that clear first off. Probably, a random Masters player. But yeah, so I am the CEO and co-founder of Ladder Legends Academy and Ladder Legends Media, aspiring entrepreneur and impact investor, and been playing StarCraft 2 for probably around 10 years now as a random player. So I have some, I'd say, experience and dealt with many different patch notes. Um, and yeah, I'm from the UK. If that hasn't been pretty obvious.
I think we can tell. That's cool, though. You've been so how long have you been masters with all three races?
No, this is something that only came about last year. So I didn't play StarCraft
Cool.
2 like religiously or take. I never took it like overly seriously, just due to the nature of the fact that I was mostly working as I was growing up. I probably only took it fairly seriously in 2025 or maybe into 2024, just because I felt like I was quite bored at the time. I think working at a pretty shitty job, and StarCraft 2 kind of just became my vice. You know, when you start to do something enough, it becomes a repetitive habit. And StarCraft 2 was
Yeah.
my repetitive habit, and for some reason, I shot myself in the foot and played all three races.
It's a good way to, keep your StarCraft 2 plate full. There's always something for you to practice. That's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
cool.
100% agreed.
All right, so next, I hear you're starting another venture, the Ladder Legends Media. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we've already got 3 potential clients lined up for it. It's a really solid idea, quite new to the market. So essentially, what you find is a lot of content creators will have an agency that supports them and reps them, right? And then they go out and find them some sponsorship or a salary to promote a product or service. What we do is our clients are actually companies that are external to esports and gaming, and we bring them onto esports and gaming, and they are our clients. We use content creators and Twitch streamers in the gaming community to help their external businesses reach, as many people as we can. So there's over 3.7 billion gamers in the world, whether that's mobile gamers or that's RTS or League of Legends mobile hardcore joyers. There's so much out there that's been kind of missed by the market. So what we've decided to do is, instead of doing it the way it's been done, we reverse engineered it to essentially support everyone else on the outside looking in and help them sort of break into the gaming sphere and access that community.
Ah, that's interesting. I should be able to. I mean, hopefully, it'll give some more attention to StarCraft as well. Bring some outside eyes in there.
That's the plan. That's the plan.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always looking to improve the StarCraft 2 community. I'm always looking to improve its economy if I can. Ladder Legends has done that. We've done over $15,000 in community support in a year, which is an amazing achievement personally, actually less than a year.
That's
and
awesome.
we've done some pretty huge sponsorships with some major tournaments, as well as working with the Federation, with Gerald and some other bits and bobs here and there. So we've had the pleasure of working with some of the Basilisk team and some other really great pro players do masterclasses in Ladder Legends. It's really hyped it up and helped us get some customers, so I can pay my subcontractors a fairly decent salary for doing some random content. Plus, they make some good money from coaching. So anything I can do to help the community, the better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And totally what the
Thank you.
scene needs right now. I think
Yeah.
there's definitely Anyway, so there was one other thing that you mentioned, which I'm not sure if you wanna talk about it at all. with the Change Foundation. I don't know if you wanted to get into that.
Oh, so I mean, yeah. So the Chain Foundation is a charity that I'm being advocated for their esports and helping them build that up. They're doing 50 new locations, and it's a charity that's been going on for about 40 years, and they have basically young minds with limitations or basically born with like some genetic disorders or learning difficulties. Basically, they might find themselves in positions where they'd struggle to find professional careers or do a lot of sports without probably the support they would need to do that effectively. So the Change Foundation supports a lot of young minds over in London and England. And what Lana Legends Media and Academy is doing is we're supporting them in building up their 50 new locations so they can help more young minds actually break into the esports scene to be able to find careers in esports and gaming, and also potentially be pro players if they were interested in doing that. So we're going to be not just coaching StarCraft 2, but doing some workshops and surrounding our wonderful community with another wonderful community and helping them feel wanted and safe, and also that this is a career opportunity that's more than worth exploring.
Wow, yeah, that's really
quite
cool.
Incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've been busy, Myra. I told you I've been busy.
Yeah, you really did.
Helping support the current StarCraft ecosystem and also planning ahead for the next generation. I like it. That's awesome. Well, cool, man. I mean, I'm already super glad to meet you, man. I'm glad that we can dig into this with somebody as awesome as yourself.
Oh, honestly, that's very nice of you to say. I'm simply a humble community member, and I know it sounds fantastic on paper, but I mean, anyone could do what I do. Absolutely anybody.
Yeah, but not everybody does.
That's true. That's true. I'll take that.
All right.
So yeah, let's talk about this wonderful balance question. I mean, I'm really excited to see what you've got for me.
I really wanted to dig into this, and I'm actually super excited to hear, like, because I don't know which side of this you're going to be on, and I am pretty stuck in my ways on one side, and you know, either we're all going to be agreeing, and this will be, you know, interesting because it'll be a contrast to what we've heard presented from some other people in the scene, or we'll have a nice debate, and either way it'll be fun. So why don't we dive into it? Sorry, what was that, Miro?
Yeah, sounds good.
I was going to say I'll play devil's advocate occasionally here and there.
Awesome. Perfect. Always need that. All right, so I'll just give a little bit of a breakdown first. I think, you know, we'll probably discuss this a little bit overall, but I'll just broke it down into like mineral counts and worker counts, and then I have a little bit on each. So just a little bit of history, first of all. So originally, they all had 1,500. All the mineral patches were 1,500. And this is actually kind of interesting for me because I started playing in Legacy of the Void. So this is like, I had to do digging. Yeah, I had to like learn about the history. So yeah, apparently, you know, they were all 1,500 originally. And then in the Legacy of the Void beta, they experimented with making them 1,500 750, and I believe it was 2,000 gas. And then they ended up settling on 1,500 900. So 4 of them are 1,500, 4 of them are 900, and the gases are 2,000. And that's what it was when Legacy of the Void launched. So for me, that's normal. But I understand for many other people that's not normal. And then later,
it's normal now. I mean, we've played it so much; it's been around for so long. I'd say a lot of us have forgotten what it was like. I think a lot of us as well that probably knew it back then, either retired from the game or, you know, was coming out of that from Heart of the Storm era. Because I know Heart of the Storm was where a lot of the player base grew, and it was towards roughly like mid to end of that, I would say, for like international players. And then Legacy of the Void launched, and it was just a big bang. And I think that's where a lot of players came in, similar to yourself.
Yep. And then the last change that they did was in 2017, towards the end of September. They did a change where they bumped up the large mineral patches to 1,800. So now it's 1,800 for 4 and 900 for the other 4. and then the gases are a little bit higher. They added 250, so they're 2,250, and that's what we have currently.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for clarification, Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm were 2,500 gas originally.
Oh, okay. Did not know that. Okay. So, the big debate right now is kind of, you know, how much do we want this to really have on these mineral counts here? Some people are advocating that we increase the count or even it out or things like that. You know, I've been hearing a lot of discussion about this. Specifically, of course, there's a pig video about this quite recently. And one of the things that he talks about a lot, which I think is a good idea for us to bring up, is the concept of the double whammy as he describes it. Where if somebody's going aggressive and the aggression fails, then they're not only dealing with the fact that their aggression has failed, but now they're also mining out their main base. So now they're, you know, significantly behind in economy, and they're dealing with, you know, the opponent having more units because they were able to defend. Right? So he describes this as like, you know, it's too punishing. I personally kind of am on the side of, I think that aggression should be punishing if it fails. Because we should already, like, be encouraging aggression just through the balance of units and things like that. So in my mind, it's like aggression should be rewarded, but if it fails, you know, it should be high risk, high reward. That's kind of how I view it. But that's just my take. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
No, I'm going to really quickly just come in here and almost like make this kind of a moot point, by the way, just because it doesn't matter. Look, StarCraft 2 players are very intelligent, usually, right? Especially when they're in Diamond and above, and they can adapt very quickly, and that's the whole point of StarCraft 2 as well. When you play StarCraft 2, you're a very adaptive individual, usually, when you play well. I think it doesn't matter what we do with the mineral count and what we do with the worker count. I think that no matter what we do, well, no matter what happens, right, you've got the player base that has always been loyal to StarCraft 2, that's seen it go through many changes and still go through with it, right? You know, I remember when Liberators were released, right? And everyone would leave games if they saw a Liberator in their natural before they dealt with it. And now we know what we're doing, you know, just pull away and then go deal with it. Or you just put up static defense before it happens if you know that's a build rule they're probably going to go for. So, look, I would advocate to everybody that they could change the minerals, they could change the work count. Remember, it's still the same for both of you. It doesn't matter if you're Zerg versus Pros, Pros versus Terran, Terran versus Zerg. You both got to deal with the same economy. It just matters in a sense that, are you now forced to play more aggressive? Are you now forced to play more macro, turtly? That's what it's sort of designed to do when you change the economy of the game, is that it's designed to kind of make each race have to play a very specific style. Now, that obviously might not be as popular for a lot of people comparative to what another change would do. So, for example, if we take it from a 12 worker start back to 10 worker start, that's going to make some significant changes in the game, I think, more than a lot of people want to admit. That doesn't mean that there's a balance issue here. What it means is there's a difference in play, a difference in style, a difference in adaptability. You're going to see new build orders, which is something we desperately need. You're going to see new styles, new micro and macro tips and tricks. And let me tell you, that's really good for my academy.
True.
Very true.
You know?
I feel like the thing with, because I was there with you alongside Heart of Swarm, Wings of Liberty, right? The difference between 6 worker start and 12 worker start really felt quite minimal from my point of view. A lot of what you lost came down to 6 pool, and really, like, the 6 pool is kind of it. You also, but the majority of what it was outside of the 6 pool was, sorry about my microphone, was the elimination of a lot of the downtime that we see back in a lot of those older VODs, where they're just kind of building their work count. And on the one hand, that downtime is not bad, because it gives you time to mentally reset, kind of plan out what you're going to do for your builds in the middle, and kind of allows you a bit of time to refresh from the last game. But on the other hand, it's very slow during that period, and
Yeah.
there's not a lot that is happening, and that's kind of
That was the
big
issue for a
downside.
long time for the tournaments. If you remember, Myro, was that people would be the cast. I feel so bad for the casters back in the day because they used to have to find a way to fill 4 minutes of just watching them make workers in a supply depot. It was a lot of talking because you'd have to find where. And then the problem as well. Now remember this, especially in Heart of the Swarm. It wasn't just the fact that it was long start times, but the play style was very turtly by nature. So the game itself was a lot of waiting around and waiting for action, whereas in Legacy of the Void, you're seeing constant action, especially on top pro players that would be doing a lot of drops or ling run buys or warp-ins in the main. The economy change isn't going to change that. That harassment's still important, and the difference is, remember as well, from back then to now, is there's a lot more veteran players than moderate players, which means they've been around for a long time. And they've also got people that have been watching the games for a long time. So that means that they should theoretically just be able to adapt their current play style to what we currently got, and there's going to be a lot of content made on that from people that are really, really important to the community, such as Loco, Pig, Harston, you name them, that they exist. Sorry if I forgot anyone. But in a nutshell, you've got to remember the economy of the game. It only dictates how the game starts and also what cheese you can do, really, theoretically. Now, I do like the point you've made that it punishes certain economic changes can punish an early game aggression. I agree with you that definitely, if you're going to play a balls to the walls all in, if that's what it should be, and you shouldn't be trying to do a cope. It mostly doesn't work. And the times it does work is because you've got a lot of MMR on your opponent. And then that just means you're either smurfing or you've been mismatched somehow. So that doesn't actually mean anything to balance. So as long as, I would say, the players are willing to adapt and change with StarCraft 2 as it evolves, which is what I've been saying it's been doing for years. It hasn't got dead, it hasn't got worse, it just means it's evolved. And when it evolves, it becomes very difficult again. And people that think they've got it down, they're in Masters 2, Masters 1, low GM, and they're very upset because they're going down a few hundred MMR. Well done, you're going to. It's a change of pace, it's a new thing, it's a new challenge, a new opportunity to beat your peak, because everyone's going through the same thing you are.
I think briefly touching on Heart of the Swarm again, you mentioned how Heart of the Swarm was very totally. Heart of the Swarm was very totally because of a couple of things that changes that occurred back then, and the big one was the introduction of the Swarm host meta and like the way specifically
that was fun.
the Swarm host specifically would force long drawn out games. But outside of the Swarm host meta, you had some constant aggression with the Lingbane Mutaverse 4M meta, where it was literally just a constant parade push of never-ending aggression on both sides, because Muta's darting in and out, picking off reinforcements, mines burrowing, splitting, like everything going on all the time, and that's kind of where that started. And then the Swarm host aggression kind of flipped the switch, and the mine nerfs at the time flipped the switch on that as well.
Put me to sleep is what it did.
Yeah,
that was.
I mean,
listen. That time, can we all just be honest for saying that time in StarCraft was not watchable?
No, it wasn't. There's a reason that special penalty for literally alt-tabbing out of the game in the middle of the live broadcast.
A hole in my soul. But again, that's the point of what I'm saying, is it evolved, right? So
it did, yeah.
When we changed that and we went to Legacy of the Void, it was a positive change. It's been around the same time from when we last got a new game, and if we do see a new patch, or we see the economics of the game changing, I think everyone should just be happy with the fact that we're getting something, and honestly, just think of it as a new DLC or a new game. Because if it's going to be that dramatic and that impactful, everyone should have an open mind to it, and it shouldn't be considered this isn't good for me. Tough shit. It's not good for anyone. If it's not good for you, I guarantee it's shit for everyone. But you know what? Let's deal with the shit together. We're a fucking community. And sorry for the language, but do you get my point? I just it's really frustrating when people balance Whine, because it's sort of like, dude, excuses are excuses. You can flavor it with strawberry. It's still a fucking shit-covered strawberry. It's
So on that particular point, you also mentioned earlier that a lot of strategies seem to have vanished, and I'd argue that a lot of the earlier patches that we've had, particularly under the Balance Council, seem to be aimed towards and quote unquote balancing the frustration out of the game, and that kind of feels like it's resulted in. It feels like it's resulted in the loss of a lot of the more strategical plays that we used to see, a lot of
aggression
that we used to play, a lot of aggression
Miro,
see.
I'm gonna say something.
At high levels.
I'm gonna say something. It made a bunch of snowflakes, right? It made the game easier because it was dealing with people that couldn't be bothered to learn. I was one of those people, but I didn't complain about it. I just knew I was lazy about a game. It's fine. Like, you know, if something's pissing you off, deal with it, right? I mean, you don't have to cry about it. And listen, like, let me put it this way. Here's when you know balance is a problem. If you look at the GM scoreboard and the top 20 are Terran, Protoss, or Zerg, you've got a problem. If Zerg, Terran, Protoss is not in the top 20, you've got a problem. That's not the case. The number one player in the world is Cyril, and he's a Zerg player. People say Zerg is trash. It's not trash. Cyril just learned to evolve his Zerg playstyle to what it currently is today. Reyna did the same thing. So did every other Zerg player that is worth their salt in anything. They sat down because they love the game, and they love the strategy, and they love thinking of new ways to win. And that's the difference. StarCraft 2 builds competitive mindsets because it's a competitive game. You take away the frustration, you're basically handing everyone a participation trophy. That's how it feels to me.
Yeah. I'm totally with that. Like, especially with, like, Widow Mines, you know, we've talked about this before, you know, but they're a great example of this. Because it's, like, one of the most hated units that people are just extremely passionate about. Like, oh my god, the Widow Mine. But honestly, like, you know, when I came into the game at Legacy of the Void, like, I saw the Widow Mine as one of the most awesome units in the game. Like, and to this day, I'm like, how could you hate the Widow Mine? Like, it's so much fun. Call me crazy, but I like seeing shit blow up.
When you pick up a bunch of I love it too. When my Widow Mine's burrow, and I pick all my Marines and my medevac, and I fly them away, and it just so happens a Zergling's under your medevac, so it blows up your entire squad.
It's fucking great.
40G, is that you?
Like, even when it happens to me, it's like, I'm mad in that moment, but then, like, half a second later, I'm like, that was fucking funny.
That was funny. You know what I've always wished? You know, like, you know those fucking weird, like, there used to be, like, a salt mines thing, right? But I think there's so many funny moments in StarCraft 2 that because the game's so serious, no one tries to make, like, imagine if you got, like, a bunch of replays of people doing dumb shit in StarCraft 2 and then losing, or, like, and you just put some funky music behind it and then just clip it and segment it into a video. Do you know how funny that would be as StarCraft 2 players? Because, like, you never have time to laugh in your own games, really, unless you're crying, really. You know, you laugh and you're like, really, you're just screaming.
Because there's so much going on.
Yeah,
no, but yeah, so essentially, like, back to my argument. I love that I'm doing this because this is really voicing a frustration I've had for so long. Is StarCraft 2 should be treated like an itchy to scratch, right? And there should always be a level of frustration in your games. I'm a random player. Right, I must be a masochist, because let me tell you something. If you're going to sit and go, I think there's only two types of people that are allowed to complain about balance. There's anyone that's in, like, low masters to GM as a random player, or top level. Because as a random player, you would notice. See if my Protoss games are suddenly incredible, but my Zerg is terrible. That, yes, understandably, that just might mean I'm shit at Zerg. But say, for example, like me, I have about a 50% win rate, roughly 52, 53. It's nothing major. It's just slightly good. It's not good enough to see major progression. It's slow, but it's good enough that you can identify problems, right, within a certain matchup, because you play 9 of them. Now, how you execute the builds is one thing. Obviously, there's loads of variables, and I think the variables are actually what give people the opportunity to complain, because they could easily say, oh, Cyclones are busted. How is it they can just walk up, lock onto every whole army, and then just walk away? You can't defeat them. Yes, you can. Borrowed roaches and infestors. Did you macro good enough to get those out? No. Well, now you know what the problem was, right? If that was the case, everyone would be doing that, but they're not, because it doesn't work. Cannon rushing, right? I remember there was a time, Mario, you might remember this, back in Winter Liberty, Heart of the Swarm era, where cannon rushing was considered the dirtiest strategy on the planet. It was considered overpowered. But then I remember Terran players just being like, "Wait, I have siege tanks that outrange photo cannons." So then,
I mean, what do you mean was considered the dirtiest strategy?
oh my god, it's not even. Do you know what I mean? It's not
Right,
because
not in
Protoss had to evolve it now to Void Rays and Tempest, which I find way more obnoxious.
Yeah.
Let's don't even get me started on that.
But that doesn't mean Protoss is inherently overpowered or has a balance problem. It means that Protoss player did something fucking funny, and you got too pissed off with the fact you didn't want to play a macro game against you. And that's why, because you know.
I do want to make a distinction here, though, because like there's a point that you've said a couple times here in different ways, and I do want to push back on this, because the idea that that balance like doesn't matter, or that you shouldn't complain about balance if you're not like extremely high ranked, I think that's a little bit weird. Like, I understand the sentiment behind this, and I actually have something that I wrote about this, because I hear this a lot, and it's like, when I hear this, what I think people mean to say is that balance isn't the most important factor. Like, balance isn't the reason why you're losing games. And more importantly, you shouldn't be wasting your focus thinking about balance when you're playing a ladder game, because you have no control over it. So it just doesn't make any sense to focus on it.
Can I say something to that, right? I think what you're saying makes sense if it wasn't for the fact that it's not about balance. You just haven't learned how to play the game good enough. It's just easy to blame balance. This is my issue. Balance is thrown around way too much. And the reason why top level has a right to complain is because top level has learned how to play the game to the point where they're top level. So that means if there's a balance issue at that point, they would know. Not to say that sometimes they're not just coping a little bit, which we know sometimes they are, but it's quite obvious if that's the case. But, you know, well, that doesn't... Look, if a Diamond player and a Masters player, I feel bad for them with the smurfing that goes on that rank, right? But then, you know, deal with it. Everyone else is, right? But balance cannot be the problem because you just don't know what you're doing. You could be Diamond and Masters, you're still top 8% of the game, that's fantastic, but you're not the top 1%. And there is a skill gap.
There's a distinction, though, because like, balance might not be the reason why somebody's losing a game, but that doesn't mean balance doesn't affect them or that they can't have opinions about balance. Like, you know, the classic example for me is Overlord drops from Hatch Tech. Like, that's something that balance definitely affects me on, because I just can't do it anymore. It's physically impossible. I can't play better into being able to make overlords into drop overlords on Hatch Tech. Like, it doesn't matter how well I play, I can't do that. Like,
but if you love the game, you're supposed to evolve from that. So now you know that doesn't work. You find something else that does. That's not a balance issue. That's an evolution issue. That's you having to change your playstyle. So that's why you do balance patches. It's not actually balance patches when you think about it. It's more about. I hate when they use patches as well, because it makes it sound like something that needs to be fixed. I think it's just changing how the game gets played, which means it's a new style of playing, which should be exciting. If you know, like, I remember the 3 racks against Protoss for Terran was amazingly strong, and then Protoss realized how to deal with it, and then Terrans were like, oh, Protoss is OP, and I'm like, no, it's just every Terran and their mother has done this against them for weeks, and they finally figured it out, and now they're dealing with it. That doesn't mean the build was weak. It means, and also, right, a Diamond player doing 3 racks against another Diamond Protoss loses to that Protoss. But if I was to put that in the hands of, say, my coach Nico, who's a 5.3k, and he pulls the 3 racks out of his ass, he's going to beat that Protoss probably just out of sheer micro.
Yeah, and
it's a skill issue, not a balance issue.
Yeah, but by that same token, like, changing, you know, and making a patch to change the way people play, right? So it's just like a change to the game. I mean, it's the same thing if you're talking about balance, and it should be changed in a different way. You know, it's just talking about, should we change the game? Which is really, like, my point that I'm making here. It's like, I think that balance whining is probably never healthy, but having opinions on balance and talking about them, I think, is good for the game. It's part of why I'm doing this.
You can have discussions, but my problem isn't the discussion part. It's that people don't have discussions. They just outright claim that the reason they're losing is because of a certain race. And my other issue is that they have these wonderful ideas about why they need to patch a balance. They say, oh, Like they never say, "Oh, Protoss is imbalanced because of that specific damage difference between a Stalker and a Mordor." It's because Zerglings they're too fast, or when they got Zergling speed, or whatever. It's because they say, "Oh, Zerg's just overpowered. You can't do anything against them after this time frame." And I
There's
say,
never any reasoning attached to it.
Yeah,
it's very
and they say,
qualitative.
like TVP, right? Terran is disgustingly strong versus Protoss in the early game, and I'll say slightly mid game, depending on how the two players have decided to open. But then the late game, Protoss typically does a lot better, depending on the Terran. But that just tells me is you already know the answer there. If they say, "Oh, you can't kill us Protoss after 7 minutes," I'm like, "Cool, kill them before 7 minutes then."
Yeah.
Or do eco damage. So learn a build that has eco damage involved, or maybe stop going 3cc, which doesn't work anymore. Like it's just that concept that people want the game to play how they want it to play. They always want to win, and I don't mind people being frustrated at the game. That's why we have assault mines. But but
I think, if I might, my big concern with that is what happens when we get to a point where, in a matchup, a race is essentially pigeonholed into doing one or two specific builds, and if they don't do those builds, everything else fails, or if they do those builds and the opponent knows to expect those builds, then they hold the builds and there's nothing that they can do.
Like with Zerg versus Protoss
kind of
right now.
Fine line. There's kind of a fine line, and I'd actually argue a little bit against the Zerg versus Protoss recently, because like looking at Shin and Rogue recently, how mutas have become very, very prevalent in the last couple of weeks and months, have skyrocketed in their presence in ZVP and become surprisingly effective in ways that we just didn't expect them to. But I now find in TVP, you almost see a 5-rax being the go-to, and if the 5-rax doesn't work, then you basically hard turtle while the opponent just takes the entire map, and you're essentially trying to play all in from the campaign, wave after wave after wave, and just hope for the best. And there's a point where it's kind of like, what happens? Like, do you go too far? And I think the strategic variety should be available to both sides. Yes, you can lean into one side is stronger at this particular stage of the game. Like Terran is generally considered to be stronger at an earlier and mid-game state, and Protoss should be stronger at late state. Sorry about that.
Look, each race has their own strengths, and I think sometimes people forget that because they play so many games, they get numb to that fact. Terran is designed to be aggressive. Zerg is designed to evolve to a point where they become unstoppable. Get the hive tech, get your ultras or whatever the hell you want to do, get that out, right? And Protoss, well, to be honest, Protoss just does whatever it wants, right? But that doesn't mean. But like Protoss is typically a defensive race. I find personally, right? You defend the Terran and Zerg attacks, and you mass up an army with good upgrades, with a good composition, and then you go ahead and you do what you need to do, go kill the enemy base, right? And you do your warpins and all that stuff. And yes, it can be very overwhelming, but that's where mistakes come in, and that's where, okay, guys, like, you know chess, right? Does anyone here play chess?
Not really.
I'm familiar with it, but we don't really play it. Yeah, we've got friends that do.
Okay, well, I'll try and layman's this, right? So in chess is very similar to StarCraft 2, and I think StarCraft 2 and chess are actually very similar in terms of how the skill ceiling works. So there was a guy that actually made a really cool statistical survey where he talks about what games were the hardest to reach GM in, and chess was first and StarCraft 2 was second, and it's just because of the major skill gap between them. And basically in chess, if you make a move and then your opponent had already planned that move and then they counter it, you're now behind for a lot of the game unless you can find a way out of that trap. Especially if you go into check and then you can start taking pieces. That doesn't mean that the white pieces are stronger than the black pieces. You made a mistake. And that's the same with Zerg, Terran, and Protoss. If you play the races by how they're supposed to be played, you're going to see a much better win rate. So when I was Platinum, I remember I was playing a game of chess and I realized that I played chess the same way I played StarCraft, way too aggressive. I didn't do all my macro cycles. I didn't check my supply. And you know what? I had to make a decision. Did I care enough to get to diamonds to learn all these things and then turn it into a habit? Yes, so that's what I did. Then I became diamond almost within 2 weeks by just having notes around my computer. I used to have Post-its on my computer screen saying check supply, stop being a dickhead. You know, literally, like, just stop being a baby. Just get on with it. Because I used to get really upset at the game, and I used to have little post-it notes being like, you know, stop being a little girl and just fucking play the game, and don't be upset when you lose. And take losing as an opportunity to look at a replay, and then you get to watch an awesome game of StarCraft again, just where you lose. It's fine. Just change your mindset about how you perceive it. And I think too many people love watching their replays when they win, but they don't watch the replays they lose, and they just assume it's a balance issue, or they assume it's because someone's a smurf or someone's just better than them. But actually, it's just you miss a lot of fundamental key points. So to argue on your point where Zerg, I know you talk about Zerg here, where a lot of people have been recently saying, oh, Zerg can only do one or two things to win. That's completely false. That is absolutely false. I don't think for 1 second Zerg has to do one or two things to win. I think it's because Zerg players are conditioned to playing those one or two things more often because they win more often against the style that Protoss feels they have to play. Protoss feels they have to do the DT opening or the 2-base charge lot Archon thing, or they have to play the Oracle opening to play safe, right? Like, they're scared of Zerg and they're scared of Terran just as much as Terran and Zerg are scared of them. And I find it really funny as a random player how many people say I hate Zerg as Terran, then you find Terrans who say I hate, you know, the other way around. Sorry. So my TVZ is garbage. My ZVT is garbage, right? But one of the matchups are pretty good. So that tells me fundamentally I'm probably not capable of dealing with the aggression from these races. And these are things I need to look at and I need to focus on to learn. And since we're on the topic of balance, check the balance notes. Even if they're 3 years old, check them. If you've never seen them, understand what they did, and then you'll understand the build orders that are now in play. If you're not willing to look at replays, just look at that at the very least, because they're there for a reason. And the changes have been made to make the game more interesting, and to make it more fun to watch, to make it more fun to play. I think if people lose and they take it personally, that's their fault. And you can't blame the race, because otherwise there wouldn't be any pro players playing your race. Considering, you know, you've got Max Pax, probably one of the best Protoss players in the world, Clem's top Terran in the world next to Maro, Cyril and Reyna and Rogue and stuff, they're the top Zergs. They're all competing for the same MMR. And if it was a case that one race is worse off than another, they wouldn't be up there. And that's truly the case. Just play the race how it's supposed to be played. That was a rant, I
Interesting.
know, but
No. I'm thinking
was a rant I
about
needed.
something you said a little bit early in that with like, you think the reason why people are gravitating towards certain builds is because those are builds that they're conditioned to think that they're going to win with, right? I don't know. I think that's interesting because it reminds me of, and Miro probably knows what I'm talking about here, the
Yep.
2 or 3 times in Legacy when Protoss has been utterly convinced that they can only open Stargate against Zerg and it's impossible to open Robo, or the other way around. And then some pro will end up just throwing it into a best of 5 or something, and they win, and it's like, oh my god, is this viable again? And then everybody starts doing it. I just find that interesting, you know, because I've seen that a couple times with Protoss. I feel like, just because it's like
Proxy
a really
Robo is another good
obvious.
example. Proxy Stargate.
Yeah, what was that?
Like, proxy builds in general is
yeah,
a really
proxy
good
builds is another thing. Yeah, but no, I think like in PvZ, when you open either Stargate or Robo Twilight, like, it's a very binary choice, and it's very obvious like which meta we're in. You know, right now we're clearly in the Stargate meta, right? But there's been times when it was the other way around, and people were convinced Stargate wasn't viable. But if I remember right, it was not always balance that changed what was meta after that. A lot of times it was just people seeing that the build actually is still viable, even if people aren't doing it, you know, and then people start to do it some more.
My favorite is when people try to copy pro player builds with no context of why they're playing those builds, and then saying, this is how bad Protoss has got because I played Clem's build and it didn't work. Right, just because Clem played it doesn't mean it's an instant win build, and Protoss is not the problem here. Okay, the problem is, I don't know, you, like, you can flip the script in as many ways as you like. It comes down to truly, right? So it comes down. Look, guys, let me just be honest with you. It comes down to a skill check. StarCraft 2 is a skillful game. If you can't play it that well, that's not your fault. You should enjoy the game you play, but there's loads of resources out there to teach you. And I'm not just talking. I'm not trying to plug in another Legends Academy here. You got Pig, you've got Loco, you've got Hearthstone. They do fantastic content. You got Winter StarCraft does his content. You had Falcon Paladin back in there. He did incredible stuff. And there's some old legacy stuff even for Legacy of the World that still works, right? Yeah,
Vibes Bronze GM comes to.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
I mean, I would say the Bronze GM stuff, and I'm going to be a little slightly contradictory here, but also probably an unpopular opinion. A lot of people like to direct people to the Bronze GM, but that's so past meta and past patches that they're no longer viable, and there needs to be some new ones. Like because what was good in Bronze Diamonds 2 years ago will probably not work today, and that's
true.
But the concepts and the mechanics are still the same. So, for example, right, I remember how I learned. I remember when I learned how to scout if a Zerg was going to do 12 pull first or hatch first with Terran, was to send the 18 SEV out to scout, right? 18 scout. And then you would just go check the natural and go straight back home. You would just see how far along the hatchery was being built. Now, before that, I didn't have a clue. Then I watched an old Bronze GM, saw a Diamond level 1, and I clicked on it, and then I went, oh, that's actually fucking really useful. So certain mechanics and behaviors are still always viable because it doesn't matter how much you change the game roughly, you'll always still need those mechanics, like Zerg's macro cycle. You need inject, overlord, creep. Inject, overlord, creep. You can change the game however you like. As long as you're doing those three things in that order and prioritizing those three things over other stuff, you will see a significant improvement in your play, and then speed comes with time. It's like being a chef. Everyone who starts cooking thinks they can cut a carrot at 10 miles per hour and they cut their finger off. You get quality, and then speed comes with time. It's a natural process for the human brain to always be faster and faster and faster. So you just got to get those fundamentals down. That's it.
Lambo's Zerg Academy is another one. As
oh yes, Lambo's Zerg Academy, and yeah, you're 100% correct.
Yes, is
100%. And another Legends Academy is also around there.
I
don't know if you guys have heard. There's this thing.
With a low price of no, but like there's loads of free content there as well. There's master classes you can attach to, and coaching's not for everyone. And I'd like to touch on this as well, actually, with you guys regarding the coaching aspect of StarCraft 2 around the balance as well, because you do hear pro players as well, or even low GMs who coach will also say balance issues. And they bring that onto their students. And this is something that Lana Legends has made a fucking big point of avoiding, is that we don't coach balance, we coach fundamentals and mechanics, right? And habits. And Myra, you know this, right? You're an experienced guy in Lana Legends. You know that the first rule I implemented was we don't have any racial issues with each race. So what I'm trying to say is we don't race shame. We don't say, oh, you're a dirty Protoss player, you're a dirty Zerg player, whatever the fuck, right? We respect each other and we practice with each other and we just learn to play the game better. And one of my biggest rules is we don't balance wine. And I'll tell you why, is because when you balance wine in an academy, what happens is that becomes somehow a lesson. It becomes something you teach, and it's really annoying because then what happens, and one of my coaches did this, and I had to say to him, I was like, never do that again, he said, you're only allowed to cheese until GM, then you can learn to macro. And I said, why the hell would you say that? Why would you ever say that? And he's like, well, because the meta versus Protoss and Zerg doesn't allow you to macro. And I was like, dude, that is the worst advice. I said to him, so you ever do that again, you're never coming back. I said, that is the worst advice I've ever had. But the thing is, his student went ahead and did that. He got to Masters 3, peaked Masters 3, got nearly to Masters 2, started to drop, and then he tried to macro a bit and went all the way back down to Diamond 2. Because you could cheese your way up to a high level, but what happens when the cheese doesn't work? Then you're playing against macro game against someone who's practiced macro all the way up to that MMR. And now you're suddenly in a position where you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, I will say that cheese is one of those things that there's actually a lot of skill in almost every cheese. There's a lot of little things that people ignore, and despite my own misgivings about cannon rushing specifically, cannon rush has its own skills. You know, the ability to identify like the perfect cannon location, where you need to place your pylons, how to wall off properly, and little things that you don't think about if you don't do those things. So they have their own skills, but it's a completely different skill set than playing a macro.
Well, you're on like a different branch entirely. Because like
Yes,
when
and
you're
I would
playing a macro
generally
game, that's
argue.
kind of standard, and that's like the standard branch. But when you follow cheese, it's like you get really good at practicing that branch, but you're not on the main branch that everybody else plays. And if something happens to your cheese with balance and you can't do it anymore, and now suddenly you have to learn the main macro branch, and you have no practice with it.
Which
Yeah,
it's very
build trait.
interesting because players who are well versed in both cheese and macro play are the players that really excel going through the ranks because
That was
Yes.
the only
they're the
way I
ones,
hit masters. Like I
they're the
practiced
ones
macro
who
purely, and then it was only after I started learning the cheese that I like mixed in a lot
Everyone
of
started
micro and
hating you.
multitasking.
but the thing that being able to cheese, even if you are a primarily macro player, does is
Both people off.
allows you to. It throws people off, firstly, but secondly, when games get messy, and they will get messy, it allows you to be able to hold your fundamentals better because you are familiar with the game state of being in a messy game through cheese.
Yes.
But you are also capable of playing a macro game as well. So, in the event of the game getting messy, your macro doesn't slip. Whereas a macro player who is not familiar with cheesing and having to consistently be able to deal with cheese and being on the aggressing end or the receiving end, then has the problem of, oh no, my entire plan has been thrown off. How the fuck do I go from here? So there's a lot of improvisation, I think, that cheesing also gives you as a skill.
Sounds like a technical of that.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was like, what the heck? It didn't loop the StarCraft playlist. I was like, what was going on here? I don't know what this music is.
La, da, 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 da. Yeah, like, I mean, like, it sounds to me like you both do agree with me that balance is fundamentally not the problem.
Oh yeah.
It's just that some people don't like this current meta. That's a them problem.
Yeah, I mean,
I
most of my complaints about like the way the game currently is, like I describe it as balance, but like I'm really talking about design, because it's like I would like to be able to play some builds that I can't currently. I would like to be able to do a little bit more early game aggression, and for Protoss to have a little bit less of an easy to control late game, because like that is one thing that I think does sort of matter, which doesn't get touched on that much, but like when people talk about something being unfair, like that does matter to a certain extent because that's just how humans are wired. And if something is not fair and we're not required to do it, we'll just opt out of it. So if we want people to keep playing StarCraft, like there does need to be a certain degree of fairness, but it's a wide margin is kind of my point.
Yeah, I think a lot of balance complaints also come down to this race can do this. Why can't my race do this? Which is a really dumb
pick
way
that
of looking
race.
at things.
Yeah, different
which-
races
If you
are
want
different.
to do that, play that race.
It's a really
Yeah.
dumb.
It's like Jesus.
It's a really dumb thing to
Yeah,
think
totally.
about that way. Because
Oh,
Like
it's
you know,
so-
me saying that I want Zerg to have more aggression in the early game, I'm not saying that I want Zerg to feel like Terran or Protoss. Like, I don't need an Oracle. I don't need to be able to do double medevac drops. Like, that would be crazy.
like it's just like look. This is why I played random. I liked playing all three races because they were all cool. I liked all the things you could do with them. And someone would be like a Terran player. They'd be like, oh, why is it the Protoss can just warp in 1,000 units in my main base in 2 seconds? Well,
they're
if you want to know,
Protoss.
if you want to be able to do that, guess what? If you go back to the main menu, come out the game, stop coping, GG, you lost the game. He's got so many 1,000 zealots in your main base, you might as well just GG. I don't know how he's done that when there's only 200 supply. Right? Then what you do, right, is you click on the league you're in, the portrait. You go to leave league. You go from Terran, and you go to a shiny new border called Protoss. And you click that, and you start down in silver. Enjoy. Now you can suffer like every other Protoss player has with the double drops that you've been allowed to do this entire time, and then immediately pick back up again and bugger off to another base and stim. Like, I'm sorry, but like, I just don't think it. I just don't think it matters. Truly, what other races are doing, you should be focused on what your race is doing, what your race can do. I know I'm sounding like I'm being a bully here, but like, I think conceptually, what's more important is to not worry about what they're doing, unless what they're doing is about to end the game for you. You should be focusing on your macro cycles, your fundamentals, and your mechanics, and then, with a little bit of scouting, hopefully, if you're not doing that, then you don't deserve the win. Then obviously you can win the game. StarCraft 2 is a highly complex game. It's got a lot of things you have to do. It's very demanding. It's basically a full-time job, but you don't get paid. You cry. But that's what you chose to do. You chose that. You downloaded the game. You press play. Now you are suffering. You chose to suffer. And this is my very unique view on StarCraft 2. And this is what I say to. I think Miro, I might have even said this to you in a group call once with other players. If you're going to play StarCraft 2, you've chosen to go down this route. You've chosen to struggle. But that's good, because that's how you learn.
Match meeting. I think it was during a CTL meeting, if memory serves.
I actually think it was, because I remember giving you guys a hype up, and I'm saying, look, just do your best. It doesn't matter if we come first, second, third, fourth, or fifth. We all tried, we did our best, and it just means we learned from the process. We all made the hardest step. We got here. And
which, just briefly, side tangent. Props to Ladder Legends for competing in CTL for the first time and doing as well as they did. Just wanted to side tangent that. Okay.
Thank you. And we ended up fourth, and I think that's just very unfortunate because one of our players had an extremely bad personal time, but we didn't want to take him out of it. I wanted to give him a reason to feel like, he's got some responsibility and people were relying on him, and we were very proud of him. And even though he lost 12 out of 13 games, we didn't hold it over his head. We very clearly was like, it's okay, the CTL doesn't mean that much to us. Like, yeah, if we didn't have that problem, we'd be first. But the fact that we competed and we were second place, first place, and third place for most of the season means every other team had to really push to beat us. And I'm so proud of everyone that participated, and myself included. I think it was 5-2, so I won 5 games and lost 2. Because I think they needed another body, and I'd happily represent Ladder Legends any day of the week in any tournament. And and I remember saying, I didn't say to any of you in these calls, "Oh, watch out for Protoss if you're Zerg, just do the cheesiest shit." No, just play your best and enjoy yourself. I think the best message we could send to this community, and I think it's something they need to hear because they haven't heard it in a long time, is this is a game. You play it to enjoy yourself. You play it because it's what you love, right? You wouldn't play it otherwise. Please enjoy it and just realize that you're playing it for a reason. There might be a really important part in your life where StarCraft 2 was there for you. It was certainly like that for me, and although that sounds really cheesy, I think most players feel that way. So enjoy the game. Stop worrying about balance as an excuse. And if you really think you have a better way to balance the game, the best thing to do is, do what everyone else does. Post it on Reddit so everyone can roast you.
Yes.
That's the best thing to do. Maybe you might get lucky and one person will upvote it. Who knows?
Yeah, right.
What a day that will be. What a day that will be.
As a side note, I think it's very funny. But I don't want to poo-poo that idea, because the idea of posting your game on Reddit and going blah blah blah, this is broken, and then you're going to get a shit ton of people who are going to sit there and go, no, you did this and this wrong, and then
it's like
on the one hand, well, yes, but also no. On the one hand, you're going to get a lot of shit, and some of that shit is going to be very deserved, and it's going to be a bit of a blow to your ego. But on the other hand, some of those points might actually be valid.
Yeah, of course, and it's a good community like that. And the problem is that there's a lot of people with a lot to say, and they haven't themselves learned the fundamentals, and I think that also impacts a lot of the new players. So we actually Legends purposely scours Reddit for new players. And what a lot of you don't know is if they're truly a new player, we actually offer them a free month, and I personally pay for their coaching to get them into it, to see if that's something they want to do, is play StarCraft 2 and learn. So it comes out
to do. I like that.
Actually, look, I'm not. I would like to say this, like, if you don't mind, guys, like, I'm not trying to, like, Ace, I'm not trying to plug in too much here. Like, I try to avoid doing that actually, but I think a lot of people assume
Go
I'm
ahead,
some
plug
sort of
away.
I'm sure. I think a lot of people assume I'm some sort of corporate enemy that wants to try and sap the wealth out of Ladder Legends. Guys, can I be clear? I have spent thousands of pounds of my own money. I have not taken a penny from Ladder Legends, not one penny. Okay, and I've dedicated 40 so hours. In fact, right, and I'll tell you another thing. I had a full-time job. I no longer have a full-time job because Ladder Legends is my full-time job. Right, I have done this every single day, sometimes every single day, literally through the week. And I do this for you guys, right? So when I say that Ladder Legends has opportunities for you, I genuinely mean it. And that's why when we get a genuinely new person who plays the game using Bronze League, I personally pay for them. I personally say, you know, because like the money that goes in will pay for like my staff and my subcontractors and my software stacks. So I can't take money out of the business for anything because I want to make sure we can afford it. Or plus, we also pay tournaments. We did a $1,000 tournament recently, and we had to save up for that. And I had to donate some of my own money. And then OSC, thank you to OSC, who helps sponsor all our tournaments as well and donates his portion of it. You know, we have to do a lot for the community. So, you know, I'm not some sort of monster. If you guys know someone who's new to the game and you think they would benefit from playing the game in a safe environment where they can learn loads and they don't have to worry about someone calling them stupid because they didn't take a third base, you know, there's a place for that. And Miro, luckily, has been able to experience the wonderful side of Ladder Legends Academy. If you want to learn the balance,
started.
change, yeah, you are. You've been absolutely fantastic. And if you want to learn about balance, changes, etc., you should go to the place where we actively practice every day on new ways to play the game. So I think like a good way to kind of segue myself out of the balance conversation is balance is important, as Ace has correctly said, and Myra has correctly said. It is important to understand the balance so you know how to play the game. I would really like people to stop using it as an excuse to belittle someone else because they're playing a race that they worked really hard for that win. Okay, understand that you've also had win games where your opponents have felt that your race was better.
Nothing they could do.
Yeah, and trust me, if you think Zerg's a better race, play Zerg. Maybe that's the play style you want to play. Don't be stubborn and play Terran just because Clem makes it look good. All right.
So I'm glad that you just said this actually, because yeah, I was wanting to say something and you just dovetailed back perfectly to match this. So like,
apologies.
No, it's perfect because like you kind of hit on this idea that I kind of wanted to dig into a little bit, which is like people are just not wired in a way that they can separate these things very easily, and that's why like people like David Kim or Dustin Browder, who end up being game designers and actually create all these designs that create the beautiful game of StarCraft that we know today, like they're few and far between. These people are rare, and there's a reason for that. It's a difficult skill to be able to do. It's like very hard to separate your personal performance from like the state of the playing field, you know, so to speak, like the way the balance currently looks like. So, you know, I understand, and, you know, like, I'm guilty of this myself, obviously. I think most of us are. Probably most StarCraft players, 90+% at least, are very guilty of this. You know, like, it's really hard for us to separate our own personal performance from the balance. So, you know, we kind of twist and conflate the two, and we want to blame and make excuses, and, like, it's a very human thing to do. And for some people, it's even like a coping strategy that helps their mentality stay intact. For other people, it's a vice, and it really hurts the mentality and actually causes them to spiral. You know, I don't know. I just think it's interesting that, you know, it's very hard for people to be able to separate this kind of thing, and it really takes like a unique personality to be able to look at these kind of things objectively. So, you know, that's why I've always been advocating for, I think the balance should be done by somebody like David Kim, who actually works for Blizzard, actually is, you know, trained or has experience in these kind of things and is actually capable of executing this. Because I think you need like a cohesive, unified vision of like how the game should be designed consistently in order for it to feel well, you know, to feel nice. Like,
I think on that note, like there's the thing with like someone like David Kim, right? The reality is that David Kim got a lot of shit. Some of it was deserved, some of it not so much. Like there have definitely been some very memeable moments from things he's said in interviews and decisions, like very peculiar decisions he made.
DT Blink.
Dark Templar Blink is definitely one
fun one.
kind of comes to mind, and like someone I remember very specifically someone suggesting, "Hey, why don't we give Dark Templars Blink?" And I guess David Kim to
yeah,
that.
To be fair, that is a fucking stupid idea.
Brilliant.
And we all laughed the idea out of the room, and we didn't know Blizzard was listening.
Let's give the only unit in the game that can one-shot my Marines and give it the ability to fucking teleport. That's great.
I thought it was so
great.
funny how like
that.
this is why I brought it up, because like when he introduced that, I remember it was like a special thing that they did where he showed up for a tournament, and like it was like we're in the middle of a tournament, and then we like break the tournament, and we're like, all right, in between these games we're gonna have David Kim come on and we're gonna interview David Kim about the upcoming balance patch, and he says we're gonna introduce DT Blink, and we're all like, what? And then he says, we're not sure if it's going to be used.
Every Protoss was like, woo! And every turn of Zerg was like, for fuck's sake, man.
What is this? Yeah. No, I just thought it was so funny because he didn't know if like people were going to use it, and we're all like, are you serious?
Like, you know with that, though? You know the funny thing about that moment was it still took 2 years for them to start doing
right?
so.
Until Nightmare.
I think no. I think that's truly just out of pettiness. I think it's truly because DTs are so valuable in very situational circumstances, and they don't need Blink because they're that good. But then when they realize, 12 of them kill CC or planetary, how do I get to that CC before the SUV start repairing? Oh yeah, what's that ability called again? I love it. Let's do it. And then bang, one CC goes down, bang, another planetary, and the terror's sitting there going, well, fuck my life. Why am I here? Yeah, this is just
totally.
kind of stupid. I've been defending this massive Protoss ball for like 13 minutes just for 12 Dark Templars to be like, Hill, what's up, man? Yeah,
it's very funny. But my point that I was getting at was, you're gonna get like
the point.
It doesn't. No, the point that I was getting at was that, like, for all the shit David Kim did, the reality is that as a person who clearly did have a passion for the game, right? Like, he wouldn't have been where he was if he didn't have a passion for the game.
Yeah.
He
had a very clear vision of what he wanted, and despite having moments of ups and downs, he had a very clear philosophy in what he wanted to do for the most part. There were definitely some off-the-wall, what-the-fuck moments, don't get me wrong.
Wow, sounds a lot like a game of StarCraft 2, actually, David Kim.
Exactly. But you have to understand that
foreshadowing.
Whoever fills that role, if they fill that role, there is always going to be some flack thrown their way, because there are going to be plenty of people out there who disagree with the direction that they go and who don't like the direction that they go.
Yeah.
So
just to back up what you're saying,
public persona, particularly as a public persona in the manner that David Kim was.
Oh my God,
David Kim as a person was not the sole person in charge of balance, but he was the figurehead for the group of people in Blizzard that did a lot of the balance work.
So there was a really cool
so much shit as a direct result of that.
There's a really cool statement I once heard, was that, you know, if you have a big audience, okay, you're always going to have a percentage of that audience being there just to hate on you.
Yep.
So if you can release anything, and there's always going to be a percent that doesn't like you. So if you have an audience of 1 million people, and 10% of them are there to be dicks, you know, you got 100,000 people being dicks, and that's a lot of people. And the problem is they're heard way more, because, like me, I'm a nosy bastard. I like to see what people are complaining about.
Loud.
They're very loud. And I think poor Mr. David Kim did have to see all that. But you know what? That guy did not give up. And honestly, I think StarCraft 2 was better when it was having its failures, because, you know, like I said, guys, right? You know, you fail till you succeed. And I think he took a lot of the shit on the chin, and he didn't deserve half what he got. What the community should have done was actually be more supportive and say, although I see where you were going with it, and I know this is a perfect world scenario because people are assholes half the time, but like the concept, I know it came out wrong, but like you know what I'm saying, like people balance, like the people that they're to judge, they tend to be really
totally.
rude, is what I'm trying to say. I didn't mean people in general.
Knee-jerk reactions a lot of the time as well. Cough, energy, breathing,
yeah. And I think, you know, what the good side of the population could have done to be better for it was to offer it, like, you know, okay, well, as a player, I also think maybe this was a bad idea because of X, Y, and Z that he might not have thought of, and you see enough of that, he's going to see a reason why it wasn't a good idea, and that's fine. But also at the same time, it was kind of his job, and it's his decision, and it's our job to evolve and use that and take advantage of what we had back then and we took for granted that we don't have now. You know, and I think that's a really sad concept, actually, that when we did have it, there are a lot of myself included, guys, I wasn't very nice about it when I was playing StarCraft 2 as a young age. I used to complain about a lot of stuff. And I think that's probably why I'm an advocate against it now, because I knew it didn't develop me. What developed me was understanding that there was flaws in what I'm doing. And sometimes I think that's what's scary about StarCraft 2 is it brings out those challenges and weaknesses in an individual that's been practicing for years on how to hide those and just have an ego that tells them they're great. Yeah, you know.
To reflect on a lot of your both positives and negatives.
Working memory for sure. I think a lot of people. So I'll tell you a cool story. So I didn't know I had a. So I had a anger issue disorder, where basically I would crash out losing a StarCraft 2 game by like cheese. So I used to have a massive problem with anything cheese. I used to crash out. And whenever that happened, any macro game I did play, I couldn't remember what I was supposed to be doing, yada, yada, yada. And then over and over, and then it started to affect my personal life, not the game. At first I thought it was the game. But what happened was StarCraft 2 actually accidentally helped me realize I was having an issue with my sleep to the point where I had sleep apnea. So basically, I didn't know I had sleep apnea until StarCraft 2, my performance in StarCraft 2 started to dip, and I saw all these challenges come up and all these limitations I had all of a sudden. And if you didn't know, sleep apnea is basically where you stop breathing in your sleep, so you don't get as much oxygen in your sleep. So you're not in deep REM sleep as much as an average person. So my 8 hours a night would be 4 hours. So StarCraft 2, because it's so high intensity and because I was dealing with these crash outs, I went to a doctor and I actually used StarCraft 2 to explain my symptoms. And what happened was, they put me on they sent me to a specialist and they found out I had very severe sleep apnea. And I think, and I think the reason why I can totally relate to that. Yeah, and I think the reason why I tell that story, the reason I tell you that story is because StarCraft 2 sometimes is telling someone something. Is that there is a flaw in your play. And it's not that your fingers are not fast enough. It's that you're probably just being stubborn, or there's another negative flaw in you that's preventing you from being successful here. And I think so many people ignore it because they don't want to face the fact that they're not perfect because they think they're all Clem, Cyril, and fucking classic, and they need to stop doing that. Otherwise, there's no point in saying you're God's gift and playing every game like you should have won and complaining about it if you're not willing to prepare for the fact that you're losing on for a reason. So, you know, I know it's a very deep kind of explanation of StarCraft for you, but chess did a very similar thing. And I think if you're going to play a game this serious, take it seriously. I think it's fun. That's the whole point of it, right? And maybe it'll tell you something about yourself you didn't know.
Oh, I think that's good advice.
Yeah, no, that's.
I have those sometimes.
Moments, you know.
I've been enjoying this chat. I'll be honest. I don't normally get to express myself this much, so it's been nice.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's why we're here. You know, like like we were saying earlier, like I don't really like arguing with people as much as I like just trying to like understand other people's perspectives and stuff. So that's part of why we have people on.
Oh yeah. I'm always happy to have a debate. I don't care to fight and argue with people, you know.
No,
can't fix stupid, lads. You can't fix stupid. I think you're allowed to never agree with someone on a point as long as you're willing to hear out their point in the first place.
Yes,
Definitely.
you can absolutely agree to disagree. That's totally.
I think that's my favorite thing in the world. By the way, me and my missus agree to
Yes.
disagree all the time. It's
Think,
just so much easier.
It is. It is.
She's watching this actually. I bet you in a minute I'm going to get a message going. No, I'm right. You're wrong.
No,
not getting
actually.
Oh, there we go. There we go. There we
Agreeing
go.
to disagree is the worst.
She has actually just posted in there. Slavic Witch is my
Yep.
wonderful partner, and yet he still refuses to get a CPAP machine. Well, that's because
There we go.
Shurkish is right.
Now I can
Shurkish
see
is
it.
right. Shurkish is right. It sounds like you're in a helicopter when you use it. It's so loud, and you know, it's also really annoying. And I'm very self-conscious, so I don't want to be like sleeping with a fucking mask on my face with tubes sticking out. But that's a me problem. That's a skill issue on my part. But yeah, she'll probably mess me up a bit, being like, I never agree to disagree on nothing. I don't. I'm right. You're wrong.
So what are you talking about?
And I like to say, well, when you finally started playing StarCraft 2, you picked Terran as a choice, and that was your choice. You didn't even play the campaign. You bloody masochist. I did. Oh, I've got a question for you guys.
Mark.
I don't know how much longer we got, but I have one question for you all. Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Okay. So we talk about balance, right? Now,
Yep.
I think this is quite clever on the economy subject, but I'll ask you this: which race is the hardest to learn, and which race is the hardest to master?
Ooh.
The two very different things.
Ooh, I like this. Do you want to go first, Miro, or do you want me to go first?
And I'm purposely choosing two questions out of the three races because I want one of them to not be picked so that we can get in the comment section. People like, no, Zerg is not like it.
I have a feeling I know what Ace's answer is going to be.
Well, let's start with you,
Yeah.
Miro, because I want to see what you say.
Personal thought is the hardest to learn is Zerg.
Okay, interesting.
From the standpoint of coming up from a bronze level player, Zerg mechanically very different from any other race, from any other game, and mechanically is extremely different from everything in AoE, from
so you mean it's because it's so standalone comparative to the other RTSs?
It is very
different. I think we have the same answer.
Follow the same.
I like that answer. That's very. I've never heard someone use like RTS as an example of why Zerg's hard.
Yeah, so it doesn't follow the same conventions as a lot of the other races.
Sure.
Okay. I think
what's the hardest to master?
Are you going to answer, Miro?
I'm talking like to get into like mid to high GM. So if I was to ask you, if I got three people to sit down and grind for 2 years or StarCraft 2 with all three
objectively currently, I think we can absolutely disagree that Protoss is not the easiest to master. That it is the easiest to get into GM because like statistically, that's what we see at the moment. Is there's a lot of Protoss in GM across the world. That is the statistical. I am genuinely torn between saying Zerg or Terran is the hardest to master, but the thing is, it's very difficult to pick because they both require very different skills to do that. And when you look at Terran specifically, Terran as well splits into mech and bio as play styles, and I would argue that bio Terran specifically is probably the hardest to master because you have a lot of really tight timings. The micro and control necessary to get to that stage is extreme, and when you have to go into longer macro games, the amount of control that you do relative to what your opponent has to do, for example, a late game Protoss army is typically going to be a lot less control than what a late game Terran army would need to do between sieging, unsieging liberators, drops, splitting bio, dropping your EMPs, getting snipes off, focus firing, and literally everything else that you can possibly think of. So that's kind of my answer. Is I would say that Bioterran specifically is probably the hardest to master. I would not say that about mech, because mech requires a very different set of skills, and a lot of the micro that you would need to do for Bioterran is not really there for mech.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, interesting. Ace, I assume you're a mech player.
No, I'm a Zerg player, believe it or not. No.
Okay. So you're
No,
one.
I don't play.
So, okay, so let's see your answer then. Next, I'm really interested. So, which race is the hardest to learn?
Yeah, so this is interesting because when you asked the question, I immediately knew my answer to one of those, which was what's the hardest to master? To me, that was obvious Terran. Just immediately, I'm like, oh, Terran. Because Terran, in my view, is just like the highest level of skill expression possible, which means like there's just so many other things that you can do slightly better, right? So in order to actually master it, that means you're like trying to get it to as close to maximum potential, right? So if there's like a high degree of skill expression, that means, you know, it's a higher degree of like what you have to learn to be able to master it. That's kind of just how I view that. So for hardest race to master, definitely Terran. The other one, honestly, I was not sure what I was going to say until Miro said Zerg because they're the weird and different race. And then I was like, oh yeah. And I remembered like previously when I've thought about this, that was my answer. And it's for the same reason, because like Zerg is just way different from the way that Terran is set up, and Terran is kind of like the obvious, like the default race. Like almost everybody who's played in RTS, you know, the basic race, it plays like Terran. You know, like the way that the units and production structure is set up, it's just similar to the way Terran is. You know, even like humans in Warcraft is like very similar. You know,
also on that note, Terran is considered the tutorial race because it's the only one you actually get access to in the campaign. Because if you are joining this as a free game, you get access to Wings of Liberty. You don't get access to anyone else.
Right.
So,
right. But then you also don't have, you know, it's like you have the other thing of like it's the human race, and all of their units and everything is designed around like real life human military, which we're all familiar with. And the other races are alien races. So you have to learn what their stuff is and what it's supposed to actually be, and you know, that's going to depend on how well the game designers like made their concepts come through. Oh, we're getting a little Discord connection here.
Discord? Is it Discord or is it just all of us?
I think it's Discord. Yeah, it says my Discord ping is high.
Yeah, it happened for everyone, I think, because it happened to me too.
Oh no.
This.
Yeah, I kind of have to. Yeah.
Oh god, we were like. All right, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna move us and then move us back. Did that work?
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, it works.
Oh, there we go.
Cool.
All right.
Oh, look at you.
Discord being funky.
All right. Discord is doing amazing at the moment.
I
know. Lovely bugs.
I'm going to turn that question on to you now, Chadders.
Oh, yeah, no, I was looking forward to this one. So, this is unpopular, though. So, I think the hardest race to learn is Protoss.
Okay.
Now, you made a good point. Easiest to master, hardest to learn. Because Protoss is so vulnerable at the first 7 minutes of the game. And imagine if you don't know how to wall off, it takes you so long to learn how to wall off correctly.
I was going to say that, yeah, because of the wall off.
But also, knowing what each unit does. So I met a Protoss player who was in bronze, and he was so frustrated because he's like, why is it that this Protoss pro player, he was watching pro players learn before he joined LLA, he reached platinum, by the way, when he joined us from bronze, and shameless plug-in. And basically, he was copying, I think it was like max packs with his stalker control, and he was like, why is it his stalkers can kill zerglings but mine can't? So he was basically just massing stalkers versus zerg because he saw him do it. And then his opponents were just wrapping around his stalkers and killing everything. He's like, they don't die, but they do win it. I'm like, okay, dude, like you cannot copy pros because they do very specific timing and such. But the problem with Protoss is to get to Diamond with Protoss is hard because Zerg overwhelms you so quickly because you don't get gateways, you don't get. Zerg's the easiest to learn. And I'll tell you why. It's because all you need are hatcheries and the one building to make whatever you want. And usually you just overwhelm everyone in the lower levels, lower leagues, or you do Ling rushes and they don't have the wall off, or they don't have to do anything, don't have to deal with Zerg rings. They don't have mastered the Storm yet, or the Disruptor, or Zealot's Charge, right? So there's so much that Protoss needs mechanically in the start of the game to build up to a strong army that's why they're so good in the higher levels, because they fucking struggled for so long in the lower levels. So Protoss is the hardest to learn, and the hardest to master, I believe, 100% is Zerg. I think Terran is the easiest race. Not because Terran wins all the time. I think because the concept of Terran is so simple. Production, 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 stim, fight. And it's fun. And because it's fun to use bio with the dropping and the start stepping, what happens is you become very good at it because it's fun. But Zerg isn't fun at any point in the fucking game. Zerg is really, really, really hard. Zerg is really annoying, and it doesn't matter how you shade it, right? Zerg is really hard, and you've got to be on top of your fucking macro, otherwise you get outscaled so quickly. And then honestly, I don't even see the point of fucking upgrades for Zerg because it doesn't seem to do anything. Like, yeah, a 3-3 bio army versus a 3-3 Zerg army. Typically, the bio army rinses them, and it's just good that you got more lava because you need another army again just to kill another half an army of Terran while they sit back with their planetaries. Because the thing with Terran's the only race where you can play defensive, aggressive, and standard in the same game. Okay.
Yeah, true. Okay.
So basically, it's the most aggressive race. They're expected to be aggressive, but they can play defensive. They can play specialist. They can go ghost. They can go mech. There's so many options for Terran that could fuck with a Zerg player. So Zerg is the hardest to master because when you get to high level Zerg, you've got to account for so much. And you've got to be on top of your game. If you don't hit your injects, you're getting overwhelmed. If you don't hit your crib, you're not going to have any scouting. If your overlord's not in the right place, you're going to get dropped. If you don't micro your Ling Bane perfectly, a bio drop will snipe all your Banelings, and you're sitting there going, what was the point of making them in the first place? If you go Roach, Hydra, Ravager, Baneling, then, some tanks, you don't get them in position quick enough, just ruins your day. So sometimes with Zerg, it's about luck and skill shots. You hit a good fungal, good. You're cooking. You kill half that army, then you go across the map, and guess what? Because they've been producing and you've just saved them a lot of supply, they got a whole army again. And you're sitting there going, great. I thought this was my job to multiply this quickly. Jesus. So I think Zerg's the hardest to master for sure. Protoss is the hardest to learn. Terran is the easiest race overall.
Interesting.
That's fascinating. I'm saying even slightly.
So I actually want to push back on Protoss being the hardest to learn a little bit, because you are talking about a point in the game where you are bronze or silver, and
all up to diamond.
Basic macro mechanics. See, I would say, oh, goodness.
Oh, your mic.
I know it hates me.
Can we start a GoFundMe for Miro to get an actual working
yes,
mic,
please.
Okay?
Everybody sub to the stream right now so we can get Miro a new microphone. No.
Jesus Christ.
It's going to be a running joke for a little while, unfortunately. But
what are you doing? Eating gravel? I don't
know. It's just
I know, right?
I thought you were gonna argue with me, not burst my eardrums with the sound of you rubbing your mic across concrete. Like, he's so self-conscious now. He's
what I was going to say
turn it off.
I think when you hit kind of like gold, that what you're saying is definitely true. Is a lot of the fundamental things just haven't started kind of clicking yet. Knowing how to wall off is something that Protoss players really haven't learned, because there's so much that you have to pick up, and even Terran hasn't really learned that until gold as well. But when you look at bronze and silver, you see, ooh, big shiny Colossus or carriers or whatever, and you take to that, and then what inevitably happens is the stronger army will win, which in a straight up fight is usually the race with all the splash damage.
Yeah, but they don't know how to use that yet, and also they don't get to that size. So Protoss, okay, so the thing is with Protoss, you need to be very careful what units you're making. If you have too many stalkers in the early game, everything gets stalk. Yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is stalkers are great. Protoss, you have to be very intentful in what you're doing. Zerg, you can just make a shitload of Zerglings all the way up to Diamond 1, and you can just win every game just using Zerglings alone, most cases. Against Terran, sorry, should I say, versus Protoss, well, let's not talk about that. But Storm is on what? See, when Protoss learns that Storm exists, and they learn how to click those 2 buttons, then suddenly they go up about 900 over marks. But anyway, no, that's just a joke, everyone. But basically, like the concept is for Protoss, there's so much you have to learn. They're very micro-intensive. I don't get why people say they're not. They absolutely are micro-intensive. And it almost sometimes. Take it from a random player that had to slug through fucking all these leagues, right? Take it from me. The one race I really struggled to learn in the early days was Protoss. If you go to my entire career, although my Protoss is very strong now, but actually it has a 45% win rate because it was such a hard race to learn. But my Terran was like 52 and my Zerg was 60. Zerg is so easy to learn. Terran's in the middle, but Zerg was so easy to learn in a sense that you just make Zerglings. But then it gets very hard to play the middle leagues of Diamond Masters, and then to master Zerg takes a very unique set of skills to deal with the bullshit that all Protoss and Terrans put you through. And you've got to be everywhere at once, and you've got to be basically taking the whole map. And their job is to make sure you don't do that, and that's very annoying. There's a point in the game where Protoss does eventually learn how to deal with it, but that doesn't mean that they don't come up across new challenges. And you have to play a very specific way with Protoss to be able to counter that, and also to not feel like you're constantly behind and frustrated, because Protoss is very flimsy. And the other thing as well is the comeback mechanic. Is Zerg has a fantastic comeback mechanic. If you've got loads of lava, you've got a whole army. Terran will be constantly producing because that's what they've ingrained themselves to do. So while they're fighting, they're usually producing, which means when they look back at their base, they've got a defensive army to deal with the counterattack. But Protoss, if you lose your whole army, your robo has to hopefully been producing out of it, but then only then it's only got a few things, a couple of Colossus, maybe a Disruptor or a few Immortals, they're out maybe. But if you haven't done that and you've been aggressive and you've slipped on that, then you have to wait and chrono your robos to get something out before the Steel Army comes across the map or the Zerg comes across the map. Then you got to make sure you got shield batteries, you got cannons, you've got a warp in, and you got to wait for that warp in. There's a lot of problems with Protoss that if you make a mistake, the chances of you coming back in the game is quite poor. And I know a lot of people are going to blame me for that, but I just do think that a good Protoss player has just learned how to avoid that problem, and that's why when they master it, they're so strong. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it's certainly the hardest race to learn, in my honest opinion. I think Terran is just very flat, very good across all leagues to learn, because I think for Terran it's more the overwhelming amount of choices you have. So yeah, you got Bio and the mech, but the playstyle, do you do lots of drop? Do you do 2 base push? Do you do a 3 CC? Do you do a 1 base timing of 1-1-1? Do you do battle cruisers? Do you do Banshees? Do you do Ravens? There's so many options. You don't get that with the other 2 races as much.
I think with
not that will work.
I don't know. I think it's like what you're saying is kind of interesting because I don't know. I think like all the races really just require different skills. Different amounts of different skills. Is really what we're getting at here. Because like if I were to break it down, like Terran is definitely like the mechanical race. Like what you're describing about like just keep producing. It's like that makes so much goddamn sense to me, and it's the same way I think about it too. Because it's like Terran is just like the tower defense race. Basically, where like you would be able to play Terran optimally by putting everything on auto build if it was possible. Yeah. Right?
Yes.
But with Protoss, that's not the same thing. And I'm, Miro, this because I'm working on a macro trainer extension mod right now. and I was talking about this with you yesterday about how Protoss like just isn't built that way. It's not really the way that Protoss is set up. Like Terran benefits the most from what I'm setting up, basically. You know, because it's like the second you're not producing on anything, you fucked up. Like,
Yeah.
if you're trying to play
yeah.
Or you,
optimally.
if you, or
But
if
with
you don't
Protoss,
have
it
your
doesn't work that
zealot
way.
in the wall, if you don't have your Protoss zealot in the wall, or if it's not on hold position, just the fact it's not on
Yeah.
hold position kills you.
Right, right. Well, and that's you know, that's the other thing. It's like, you know, I think Protoss is a very knowledge-based race, if I had to try to
Yes.
summarize it.
Yes.
Where it's like you
Yeah.
have to know all of the different responses for a bunch of different things, and it's the right response, or maybe like one or two, rarely three, right? But that's like how
Yeah,
Protoss
yeah.
works. But if you know how to do it, mechanically executing it is usually not the hardest thing in the world. So it's not really a huge mechanics-based race as much as it is a knowledge-based one. But that, you know, it's weird because like when you get to the higher levels, that's where you get into the things where it's like it feels like Protoss is easy to play because of that mechanical difference, right? And then I think Zerg is kind of in the middle. You know,
I think
you
why
ask me.
I think why Protoss feels so horrible to play against, and why it feels so good to play as, is because sometimes Protoss's win condition is that it's just so strong it just overpowers the opponent
Mm.
so quickly, and it just feels. But you shouldn't have let him get to that point. Is my saying. Like, if you've got a Protoss that's been behind economically and you've been beating them down, they're not going to get to that point. They can't beat you like that. But if you let them get to that point, then it's really just your skill issue. And I'm not trying to sound horrible, but I just really want people to understand that it's a skill issue. But that's the same for Zerg. If you let Zerg get 4 bases and 80 drones, you are fucked. If
They're
you haven't
very
got your third,
snowbally, both
like
races.
you're just going to get destroyed. But it's the same with Terran. If a Terran gets their 4th base up with planetary, and they got their 3 CC with their orbital, and they push with a 2/2 bio army, the tanks, and they get into position. If you let them get into position and you let them siege up, you've lost the game because you didn't scout that. You've let them be in the position they want to be in. And that's what you need to avoid, right? So against all races, you want to avoid them having the position they want to be in. Don't let Zerg get to Hive. Don't let Protoss get a death ball. Don't let Terran siege up. It's a very simple concept. And what people struggle with is they don't want to admit that that's where they fucked up. Oh, I did this, I did that. Yeah, but did it work though? Like, was your micro good enough to do this? Did it? Like, you can't just say, oh, it doesn't work when it absolutely does work. That's their counter. And that's why I think actually, and it's probably going to cause a lot of arguments, StarCraft 2 is ultimately a very fair game, because if it wasn't a fair game, there would be a unit in the game with no direct counter. Every single unit has a direct counter to it. Okay, you know, so if you got 3 siege tanks versus 20 Zerglings, as long as those Zerglings get those siege tanks bundled up while they're siege, they're not going to kill them. Those Zerglings will kill them, especially if they've got all their upgrades and they've got adrenal glands and stuff, right? You know, but then again, put a bio army in there, then you've countered the Zerglings, but now you need Banelings, or you need Ravagers. You know, there's so many things, and everything's countable. You just need to know it's coming. So just scout, scout, scout. That's it. If you scout, you'll know what's coming. You know how to deal with it.
Yeah, I want to be very clear. Like, we're not saying that any race is easy or hard. We're
No.
saying that this is a hard game, full stop. So I think there is no such thing as an easy race.
No.
Perhaps there is a race that is easier in certain
But you,
points,
as a player,
and that's exactly that's the other thing I wanted to bring up is every person is different. I'm gonna point at Shu for this because he's in chat and he was making a comment. Is he found Protoss really easy and found I didn't see what he saw for anything else, but he said he found learning Protoss was very easy for him. And something that we also have to take into account is that when you are playing an off race, a lot of the things that you do,
I was about to say this. I'm glad you're bringing it up.
Playing the off race, a lot of the skills transfer over. Like little things, like little game knowledge things that you pick up that you don't even realize you pick up. You know a Zerg has to inject. You know a Zerg has to expand.
Yeah, and
you know?
like
So those are all things that will
know
automatically
my story
carry
with that,
you
Miro.
through certain stages. Yeah, and Ace is a perfect example of that. You know, like, there's a reason you.
Yeah, I got gosh, I
found...
think it was like Diamond 3 with Protoss, like after like a week, you know. But that was
Yeah.
like, I mean,
But a lot
to
of
be
that
fair,
is
I had
just,
played
just
team
basic
games for like a
mechanical
year.
changes.
Yeah,
Like a lot of that is just basic mechanical skill that you have that
yeah.
has transferred over as well. Because
It's like I love to
whoever-
like meme on how easy it was for me to get Protoss, or for me to get Diamond with Protoss, because like I literally just blind 8-gate Zealot all in every single game, 0 scouting, hold positioning, 1 Zealot in my wall, and that's it. And that's all I did. And I just got
That's what I'm
Diamond super
saying.
easily. But it's
That's
like
what I'm saying.
I knew how to do that because of my other race experience. Like I knew that it would work because of playing against that. I knew how the build worked and how to execute the all-in because I had studied it before. Like I didn't do that as a Protoss player. I had like a lot of experience looking at that from other stuff. So, you know,
I have another
transfers
question
over.
for you guys. Okay, I don't know how long we've got, but at least one more question for you, okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
Myra, remind me, what's your race again?
Terran.
Okay, good. This is going to be good. We're going to get a mixture. So, I'm going to choose Protoss for my answer to this question. Then we got one at each race, okay? So, Ace, I'm going to start with you this time, okay?
Sure, what's up?
Thank you, Slavic Witch, my beautiful, beautiful partner, for following. Ace, that's
Exactly.
lovely.
Thank you.
Okay, Ace, so what matchup do you hate playing the most or least enjoy, and which one do you most enjoy and why?
Oh, take a wild guess.
Never. I will never guess your problems. Protoss, man. I would never.
Protoss? What?
What?
Yeah.
No,
It's
don't say
Protoss.
anything.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so why?
I don't
But why? Explain
enjoy
why.
playing against Protoss right now. Well, actually, to be fair, that's actually not true. Because if you ask me honestly, like, what matchup do I enjoy the least playing? It's actually ZVZ. Like,
Okay.
But if you
I didn't
mean
ask you
not
which
a
one was the
mirror,
hardest. No, I'm
then
asking which one,
Protoss.
like. No. The mirror is a good answer. And I'm not asking which one's the hardest for you. I'm asking which one do you least enjoy, and I want to know why.
Yeah.
So you say
Then it's
ZVZ,
ZVZ.
right? So why? Why?
Because it feels very coin flippy, honestly, is the answer. Because there's a lot of builds in the early game that, you know, it's a coin flip, build order loss. It feels like, you know, various, like, you know, 14 pool versus 12 pool versus 13 12, 17 pool, all these different things. Like, you know, there's a lot of different ways that you can defend off of hatch first or gasless, for example. But, you know, it's like, in my experience, the choices in ZVZ feel very coin flippy, where it's like I don't have complete information and I have to take a gamble on what I think my opponent is doing, and if I guess wrong, then it's going to be really bad for me. And that happens a lot throughout the matchup.
What's your other mark, let me ask him?
I think I'm like 3,800 right now. My highest was Masters 2 when I was like, or sorry, Masters 3 when I was like actually practicing and, you know, playing religiously.
Okay, cool. So, what before I actually I will dive on this a little bit more. So you think ZVZ is very coin flippy? So I think personally that's only because of how Zerg players are conditioned to think of ZVZ. So I'm going to tell you something I learned, right, which helped me with all my ZVZs. It's a very, very simple concept. Pick something, go balls to the walls with it, and always have more lava than your opponent. That's it. Always. Most of the time it comes down to a lava difference, unless you're just walking on your Zerglings and the Banelings. If they go, like, so I played a game today where, and I love I play this game today because it's going to be a perfect argument to people going, what about our two best raptors? That's awesome, dude. So what you do is you go +1 melee Zerglings if you can't get to roaches, and then you try and do an ultimate surround if you can. It doesn't mean you're going to win, but that's what's fun about ZVZ, is if you do win, usually it's based on pure skill. ZVZ is the most skill-based matchup in the game, in my personal opinion. Because each unit is tiny, you have to micro Zerglings individually against Banelings. Like, one Baneling can ruin your entire supply. If you micro perfectly, it feels bloody brilliant. Roaches versus roaches is fun, but usually it comes down to either which one has more roaches, and if that's not the case, it's who's got the better upgrades. So just have more lava than your opponent, and just be okay with the fact that in ZVZ, it's just go balls to the walls whatever you decide to do. If you need to lock down 2-base, lock the shit down. If you need to, if you want to do Zergling Rush, go Zergling Rush. Don't do any copium. Just leave the game if you fail, because they're probably going to win. Have fun with ZVZ in the best way possible by just going nuts at it. That's how I started to really enjoy it, and I then had an insane win rate with ZVZ just because I just learned to enjoy it and not fear it. Truly, that's all it was. If that makes any sense to anyone.
Yeah, that's kind of how I think about the matchup already, to be honest.
That's amazing. Well, there you go then. That's a rare thing. But not a lot of people do, and I think a lot of people are just scared of the matchup, which causes them to fear a lot of things in the matchup they don't need to fear. So, what's your favorite matchup and why?
Oh, ZVT for sure. Like
Is that because of
ZVT,
the skill expression?
yeah, it's because of the skill expression. It's because every time I feel like I've lost in ZVT, it's because I fucked up. You know, like it's very
Okay.
rare. Like the only thing that stands out to me is as something that I just don't like is battle cruisers. But I can counter them very easily if like I mean that was part of the reason why I got masters. Like
The design of
Back
battle
in the
cruisers
day.
is, just, is one of those things that's just not particularly great, I guess.
yeah, it's just the
is-
design of it. I'm not a fan of it. But you
Rather
know,
than
that's like
much,
one
yeah.
unit and it's a rare unit. You know what I mean? Everything else about the matchup I fucking love it and I have for years. Like all
Love
the
it.
time that I've played StarCraft, I think there's been like maybe 6 months that I didn't really enjoy ZVT. And other than that, I've always loved it.
I love that. No, that's really cool. I think it's a very common one. Okay, Miro. So quick-
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people would generally say their Miro is the matchup they least enjoy, but I actually really love playing TVT. I find it an
too.
incredibly dynamic matchup to play.
TVT's cool.
And I find that there's a lot of variety in the matchup. I think
Yeah.
the matchup at the moment that I am least enjoying, and I can point to one specific thing about this matchup that is the reason that I least enjoy it, and it's versus Protoss, and it's purely off the basis that I feel like Energy Recharge just gives so much scouting potential
Mm.
that anything you do as a Terran feels like, and this is not necessarily true, but it does feel like they always know exactly what you're going to do because they can send a hallucination through your base or whatever, and they have it essentially every 45 seconds that they can just drop a hallucination and fly through your base and have all the information they can possibly want.
Mm.
Holding the push is obviously very different, but the information thing is very big, I find.
Okay. No, interesting. I like it. That's your ones. Okay. Do we miss anything? Happy with that, Mario?
I guess the matchup that I most enjoy is perhaps ironically a coin flip between TVP and TVZ, because if you get into a stage in TVP where the match there is a point where the matchup can be quite dynamic depending on how the game has gone, and there can be a lot of back and forth, and if the game is in that state, it can be a very, very fun matchup. But I find that typically applies a lot more to TVZ or ZVT. The dynamicness and the back and forth relationship that ZVT has is I think the thing that really does it for me. So
That's
I'd say
interesting.
ZVT slightly edges out TVP for me.
I love that.
So TVP is simultaneously like one of my most hated, but also one of my most enjoyed matchups.
No, I like it. No, that's really good. No, I think it's very common. You can love a matchup, but not like the particular way that matchup's being played sometimes, right? And I think
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's very fair. Okay. So for me, I think if I'm going to choose Protoss just so we have some variety here. So I'm probably a Masters 3 Protoss on a good week, Diamond 1 on a week where I've obviously not had enough sleep. So, I think again, I do like mirror matchups. I think you'll probably tell by now. I think it's my favorite matchups overall is mirror matchups. So PvP is probably my favorite matchup actually in the game, maybe. Um, PvP, I think, is a very skill expressionate matchup because it's not one of those matchups where the game's just over any point unless it's late game where you lose your whole army usually. And there's a lot of early game shenanigans that can be quite fun to deal with as well. There's also a lot of opening experiments you can try. So I think for me, PvP is like, I used to hate the whole proxy part of PvP, but then I started doing it myself, like Proxy Robo, and it got really good. And I actually learned how to like macro out of it, and that was really fun. So I was like the Blink Stalker trade. See, when you're like doing a Blink Stalker trade with another Protoss player and you win that fight, oh my god, that feels great. That you
Dude, what
actually
about
like,
Disruptor versus Disruptor?
oh, that's so fun, dude. See,
Yeah.
like, oh my god,
It's like
see,
giant
even when I
banelings.
lose that, see when that happens to me. So there's even like I don't think I've ever got mad. I don't think I've ever been mad when I lose against Disruptors in PvP. I usually go, yeah, that was a well placed fucking Disruptor shot. I mean, one time I think I had like a shitload of Stalkers and Zealots in just a ball, and I looked away for some reason. I think it was to check upgrades or drop a fourth base, and I looked back and they're all gone. And I was like, I had like a few stragglers, and I was like, what the fuck? So I just left, I GG left the games. I was like, I have no army. I even clicked on the like my one, which is my army hotkey, just to make sure they weren't just walking off somewhere. And I was like, no, they're all gone. Looked back, and he had like 6 disruptors and just perfectly spaced them out and just wiped out. And I thought, you deserve that win. Even if I probably could have come back in that game. But even if I could have come back in that game, I just want to give you that win. That was beautiful. Like that's so good. The one I severely dislike PvZ. I really
Oh, really?
dislike it. But look, you win a lot of PvZs because struggles in the late game, but see, getting to the late game versus Zerg, it's such a headache. I need a cigarette sometimes after a PvZ. Like it's one of those things.
Is
It's
it
like,
because of the like multi-stage of like because you have to micro the probe and then do the adept and then do the oracle and then
Oracle, then decide what you want to play, and then
and
you're
it's like
gonna do
so
this,
tight.
and then I like, you know, my favorite part is when you're like building what you think is a really nice army. You're there, you got some like charge lots, some stalkers, it's awesome, and then 20 muters have just walked into my main base. That's fantastic. I've got immortals and zealots and nothing that shoots up but 5 stalkers. And then my other one is like, you know, I'll be like dealing with some bullshit zergling run bys all game. So I'm building like stalkers and sentries and all that stuff. And I get like a colossus thinking it's hydras. No. The 120 supply of roaches just walk up and kill me. And it's sort of like, well, I'm so glad you had that in your back pocket because what else was I going to do? So I think Zerg also is just so good at pulling a Protoss out of position. A good Zerg will use Nidus networks, drops, all that stuff. And Protoss really struggles. So you got a recall, that's great, but you get 1 recall every like 5 minutes. You know, you can't do it twice.
It's like the fastest move speed army in the game versus the slowest, clumpiest, deathballiest army.
Yeah, like you warp in and then they just might have enough to deal with it, and then maybe your next warp in's ready. If not, you have to go all the way from the 3rd to the 1st, and then they pick up or they disappear and they go back home, and then they come back again with a bigger army, and you're like, yay! I just went through all that for no reason. And sometimes just even beating them, like sometimes like when like a Zerg army comes at you from all sides, you're like, I've got a storm, I should be fine, and then you drop all the storms, and they just walk through it because they give 0 fucks. And when you finally kill that army, because usually you do because you're Protoss, what then happens is, you do another warp in, and then they've maxed out again. And you're like, hang on, there's some disparity here. Fuck, how do you say that word?
Disparity?
Just something. Disparity. There's some disparity here between our supply within 5 seconds of each other, you absolute cretin. So yeah, no, if you haven't noticed, Zerg really pisses me off as a Protoss player. Fucking drives me up the wall.
Interesting.
I can't stand.
I mean, I do have to say, when I was playing Protoss, yeah, that was what frustrated me as well. Was Zerg.
It is something that
like,
it is an expression that I've heard.
It's kind of crazy, yeah.
Fairly recently, a fair amount actually.
I would feel like I'm doing well, and then all of a sudden I'm like, what the hell? Like, why is this Hydra army so massive? Like, where did this come from?
Yeah, I'll have Storm and I'll hit the Hydras and they'll just move out of the way. And I'm like, no, you're not supposed to do that. What the fuck? That's all
Oh, I
I've
hate
got.
how they changed Storm.
That's all I've got. Yeah, no, no, because the thing is, this is what I find funny about being a random player. I hate the Storm when I'm using it and when I'm against it, because see, when they use it against me, I feel like it does 10 times more damage than when I use it.
Yeah.
I feel like my units die quicker, and I'm like, that's what happens when I use it. That's a bit strange.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a problem here. Who added an upgrade? So,
I'm definitely just on the side of like I want Storm to do more damage because I think it was better when it was faster and more exciting. Anyway, I think
the Zerg player just said he wants Storm to do more damage. I need to just say that's not okay. But yes, I was about to say, thank you guys so much for having me on. It was a pleasure. I think we've had a really good chat. Probably run over a little bit. I think you did.
Like 30 minutes, but we're fine. 30 minutes to an hour, we're fine.
I was like,
yeah.
No, thank you so much, everyone, and hopefully everyone listened, learned something, and also enjoyed the banter. I'm glad we were all quite agreeable this episode as well. So thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, this was a blast. I want to thank you again for coming on. This is great.
Anytime. Thank you so much. And Miro, I'm looking forward to seeing you in the Ladder Legends chat. Ace, hopefully you jump on as well and hang out sometime.
Really yeah. I've been meaning to. I've been kind of busy this week, but I've actually been meaning to socialize a bit with you guys, so I might be around a little bit later.
Okay, I have before we end, and I want to make this extremely quick. We have asked this question to pretty much every single person that has come through and talked to us. If you could make one change, one change to each race, what would you change?
I thought I got away from that question.
No, I'm not a fucking game developer. Fine. Okay, start. Right. I like the game. I like it. Whatever I choose, are people going to roast me? Okay, for Terran, I think. Oh, do you know what? Just for shits and giggles, let the siege tank be picked up again in siege mode. Just
yes!
For just for shits and giggles.
I'm not the only one.
I just want to watch the chaos unfurl from the community. I just want everyone to scream internally and be like, "Why?"
Yes,
and all
bring
the
it
Terrans
back.
are excited to play again. All the Terrans are going to be like rotting their sleeves up, going, "Thank you, Lord, there is a God." All right, okay, but then to counter that, okay, I think. Oh, do you know what? I'm gonna be an arsehole about this, Maro. I'm gonna be an absolute dickhead about it. I want Stalkers to be able to blink twice.
Oh God, okay.
But the cooldown to be longer.
What?
So
okay.
you get. So I think the cooldown for blink. So basically, here's what I think. Right, I think blink should have a cooldown. So when you research blink, you don't get instant access to it. I think it should go around, and then it can go around again. If you don't use it the first time, you can have 2 charges, but the cooldown is 15 seconds longer.
Okay.
So Stalkers are used for poke damage, and they've got an engage and a get out card, so they can jump in, kill a few siege tanks, get the fuck out. But they can't do it again quick enough for it to be overwhelming.
Dude, that would like kind of eliminate the need for stasis traps against Zerg when you're doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking forward to every Zerg hunting me down and finding my IP address after that one.
You got one more for Zerg.
Fucking Zerg's great though. All right.
Stick Overlord drops.
I think. Okay, no. Okay. See, I'm torn between two. One I've thought about for a very long time, and again, this one's just for shits and giggles to see what would happen. But drones to be 2 drones produced for every drone you make with 75 minerals.
Zagara, okay.
But lava is produced slower. So you basically what that means is you can either focus on economy and slow down your army, or you can go for more army with you can have more army with your inject, but you're going to have slightly less workers. So basically, it kind of evens out that you could do some army, some workers, right? In the normal standard macro, but
that would be very interesting, yeah.
But if you're going to be aggressive, you can only go for the army. If you're going to be macro oriented, you can get your 3rd base up quicker and you can saturate against Protoss. Then you can decide to be more aggressive. because lava is going to be longer to produce. So like, 5 to 7 seconds longer per lava cycle for the injects, right? But what you get out of it is you get more macro, but then you have to be more conscious of your injects. So that means that Zerg could be very overwhelming if done correctly, but there's also a lot of room for error to make mistakes. That's one. And the second one is I want the queen range to go back to 12.
12?
12?
Was it 12? Was it 10? Which one was it?
Eight.
It was like
It was 8.
Oh,
It was 8.
No,
You mean 8.
Was it 8?
I was
Yeah.
gonna say.
Oh, it was
No,
8.
wait,
You're
no,
right.
it was
No,
9. Wait, no.
No,
Was it 8 or 9? It was 8.
Which one was? What
Currently
was it?
7. They dropped it by 1 from 8.
No,
It was
no,
8.
no, 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 no. I'm talking the 2-1-1 era.
Yeah, it was 8. So
It was
when
not
Legacy
8.
of the
It was
Void
longer than 8.
launched,
I'm telling you
it
now.
was, hang on, let me
Oh,
look this
it
up.
was
It
8.
might be 9.
I'm
hang on.
telling you it was 10.
No, it wasn't 10. It was either 8 or 9.
Exactly.
No, because the queens could shoot across the map. Like they were fucking good.
Hang on.
Like,
I'm gonna find this out right now. Hang on. Let me I'll even put it on the thing.
Oh, I mean, I
15
didn't mean
years.
to be riled this much over this. I made a mistake on 12, but I'm pretty sure. Like, I'll put my hands up on the 12.
Because the current queen range is 7 and they dropped the range by 1. I know for
Yeah,
a
but that
fact.
was yes, but there was.
Hang on.
was a
I'm looking it up. I'm looking it up.
But it was longer than 9 when they were sniping medevacs from across the map. Like, I'm not saying literally across the map, but it felt like it. They could shoot from miles away.
Okay, hang on. So
I know I'm right. I know it was longer than that. I know it was more than 9.
hang on. I found this. So in 2015, air attack range increased from 7 to 8 in 2015. In 2020, they reduced it back from 8 to 7. So it's currently 7 range, and the highest it was at was 8.
Whatever. What in the world is Miro? Yeah, okay, fine. I'll put my hands up.
In what world am I right?
To be fair, I said at the start of this episode, I'm not a grandmaster. Just
No,
take
I'm
all
not
my
either.
advice. Myro, you're just a nerd who knows law. I don't care enough about. I play all 3 races. You gotta give me like 1 mistake. 1 fucking mistake. Is that okay?
Yeah.
No,
Fine,
it's
I'm
not
Yeah,
okay.
that's
It is
fine.
not okay.
Fine.
That doesn't mean I'm going to fuck you relentlessly for it.
I'm gonna say it after that, Myro. You've proven me wrong. I'm not okay with this. I'm gonna go be a masochist and play League of Legends or something. All right.
All right. Well, now that we've proven him wrong, now we can end the stream.
No, I can't end the stream on being proven wrong. I hate this. All right, I'll come back one day. All right, guys. Well, thank you again so much. I appreciate the plugins, Ace, by the way, and also Myro. Thank you for being a wonderful support of the Line of Legends Academy this whole time.
Always.
Looking forward to seeing you guys on board. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, this is a blast, man. Really good to have you on.
Anytime.
Appreciate you coming out and having a chat with us. And if you want to very quickly plug the charity you mentioned at the start, because it was 2 hours ago.
Yeah, guys, please check out the Change Foundation. So that's the Change Foundation started an esports for change program with opening 50 new sites. Line of Legends Academy and myself, included specifically, will be heading that operation with them and supporting them on that journey. This is to help young people with limitations and born with genetic disabilities and or learning difficulties to achieve great goals and aspirations in the esports and gaming career, and that they're not held back by things they can't control. So if you really want to support someone, please give them all your support. They're doing a fantastic job. They're a 40-plus-year organization, and they have a fantastic volunteer scheme. So please check them out. They're fantastic. I will send Ace the link. Hopefully he'd be willing to put it in his description.
Absolutely.
I'd be surprised if he wouldn't. I've called him out now, so he has to do it.
I already said yes.
So yeah, please check them out. They're a fantastic organization, and Line of Legends will also be announcing any changes with that and any more support. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for being on.
Thank you, Ace. Really appreciate it. It's been a blast.